Good morning, everybody. As you heard, we're recording this online. So if you'd like to not be part of the recording, you can just turn your camera off. My name is Kyoku. I'm a staff member here at the Hokyoji Zen practice community, and I'm delighted to have Ryushin Jan Freier, our speaker today, with us. He started practicing in 1985 at the Minnesota Zen Meditation Center. He's practiced at a number of centers in the Twin Cities and elsewhere in the United States. And he's a very dedicated volunteer with a particular interest in feeding people that don't have enough food. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Ryushin.
Okay, thank you. Am I loud enough? Okay. So it's always interesting to put these talks together, and it's especially interesting the meditation periods just before the talk. Wondering exactly how this is going to go. So I'm kind of interested in how this is going to go. So I started thinking about giving a talk, and I found some quotes I wanted to talk about, and then I found an even better quote I wanted to talk about, and then I thought, oh, how am I going to put that together? And the other morning, when I woke up, I wrote it all down. It's not very much. So we'll see how this goes. So this is the quote I want to talk about, and especially one part of the quote. This is from Sensei Matthew Kozan Polensky, who's a teacher at Upaya, who recently gave a talk, and this is a quote out of that talk. This is our path, the qualities of a bodhisattva that open up this capacity to be with things as they are, and willingness, patience, to be with suffering, not as an obstacle, but as the kind of intimacy of life. So I'll read that again. This is our path, the qualities of a bodhisattva that open up this capacity to be with things as they are, and willingness, patience, to be with suffering, not as an obstacle, but as a kind of intimacy of life. So Kozan has really kind of absorbed the kind of practice that goes on at Upaya. This is just kind of a really condensed version of their way of practice. So what got to me was the first sentence, and the part of the first sentence. This is our path, the qualities of bodhisattva that open up this capacity to be with things as they are. To be with things as they are. So if I go out and start asking people, are you dealing with things as they are? And I'm pretty sure everyone I talk to is going to say, oh, yeah, I'm dealing with things as they are. And people with very, very different views are still going to say they're dealing with things as they are. So how is that possible? Why is that? So this has been around for a while. We, from the 60s, people would tell it like it is. And then somewhere in the 90s, people started saying, it is what it is. It used to just drive some people up the wall to hear it is what it is, as if that was supposed to stop the conversation. And it did give you one pause. Well, how are things as they are? And to ask somebody just, how are you? It turns out that's a very deep question. So why do we think that we're all dealing with things as they are? And there's an implication in this kind of talk that we're going to open up this capacity to be with things as they are, that somehow in Buddhism, we're going to come across this things as they are, that's going to be this pure, open, crystalline place of peace. And it's just, that's the way things are. But that's not really what we're dealing with. Every one of us has a different way of being with things as they are. And it's because we've, well, I've been heavily influenced by the readings that Kikon has provided on, that Katagiri did on karma. So karma, we all have our individual karma. We all have our individual smell, as Katagiri likes to say, which is a whole personality. So when I work in where I volunteer kitchen, we get a lot of new people, and you can tell right away a lot about somebody just by their whole personality, by their smell, and especially by the way they work. You can tell a lot about a person by the way they work and interact. And so there's a lot going on with things as they are. So we have taken on these models from very, very early, these models, these patterns, these habits of dealing with things as we think they are. So it's very essential to us that we have these models, that we deal with things as they are, as we think they are. So Buddha had a lot to say about this, as you might expect. So this is from the book Basic Teachings of the Buddha by Glenn Wallace. This is one of my favorite little sutras in here, from the discourse in Kesamutta. So this is where Kesamutta was like a crossroads. So there were of trade. So there were a lot of different teachers coming through, and a lot of different teachers saying different things. And sometimes they were in conflict with one another. And sometimes even the teachers would badmouth another teacher. And so when the Buddha showed up in Kesamutta, they asked him, well, who are we supposed to believe? And the Buddha, the response was, Kalamas, it is understandable that you are uncertain, and it is understandable that you are perplexed. Being uncertain in this manner, you have become perplexed. You should not be convinced by unconfirmed reports, by tradition, by hearsay, by scriptures, by logical reasoning, by inferential reasoning, by reflection on superficial appearances, by delighting in opinions and speculations, by the appearance of plausibility, or because you think this person is our teacher. Kalamas, when you know for yourselves these teachings are detrimental, these teachings are faulty, these teachings would be censured by the wise, these teachings, when fully taken up, lead to harm, to trouble. So the part that I'm interested in here for all these things, basically the Buddha is saying, you have to figure this out for yourself. But there's ways that you know that what's right and what's wrong. So my best friend in high school, when we were on our yearbook, we were supposed to put our career goal, and his career goal was homespun philosopher. You can kind of see why he was my best friend. I kind of like that idea of becoming a homespun philosopher. But the part that really gets me here is these teachings are faulty. These teachings would be censured by the wise. So the Buddha is already saying that you have some kind of notion of the wise. So there's these Jungian kind of archetypes that we carry with us. When I originally thought this, I thought this is what the Buddha is talking about. He said, well, bring up your archetype of the wise, or maybe you know somebody who's wise, and think what they would do. what they would think about. So this is also brought up in the Metta Sutta. So there's different translations. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. Another translation is, he would not commit any slight misdeeds that other wise men might fault in him. Another one is, avoid doing anything unworthy that wiser people would criticize. So there's this idea of, we carry with us some kind of notion of wisdom. And I thought, well, that can be kind of faulty too, because that's based on what you've run across. But I think later on, I'll be quoting from Frank Ostaseski, who indicates there's a little bit more to this, that there's innate wisdom. So just remember that phrase, innate wisdom. But I think there's these ideas that we do run across people who seem to be wise. So Katagiri Roshi, when he was growing up, that sometime a priest of the Pure Land school came to his house, his parents' house, and Katagiri Roshi was really impressed with this guy's whole personality. And so he was interested in that from the very beginning. Something clicked, something came together for him. And it's hard to put into words exactly what that is. And that's kind of why these Jungian archetypes are so powerful. It's kind of hard to tell what's going on. So I was fortunate enough when I was in college to have a class and some contact with Dr. David White, who was the first person I ever knew who actually committed themselves to living a spiritual life. And he had studied in India with Sri Kumaraswamy and Aurobindo. So he had some background, and his wife, Beverly White, was instrumental in bringing Katagiri Roshi to Minnesota. So there was something about him that was a little different than my other teachers, and it's hard to put a finger on exactly what that is. But there were other teachers. There was a teacher in art, Jerry Rudquist, who's a very creative painter. I'm not sure if he has a national reputation, but he has a regional reputation. But he always was like distracted. He was never quite present. He was always thinking. He was always carrying on some kind of inner dialogue or something. And if you've met or talked to writers who are in the middle of writing a novel, they don't have a lot of social interaction. They're living a life up in their heads. It's a different thing, but it's not the same, but it's a different model. It's something else going on. So when we find these kind of spiritual teachers and we find this connection, and it's interesting that we connect with certain people very easily, and we have a hard time connecting with other people. This is one explanation, is our karma, this kind of chemistry, this kind of smell between people. And so sometimes we make these choices and sometimes the choices are really good and they really work out. And sometimes the choices are like, well, I don't know why I'm attracted to this person, but it doesn't seem to be working out. It's like, it's a shell. There's some kind of attraction on shell basis. So what I wanted to get to is, when we find these spiritual people, when people begin to practice, when I began to practice at MZMC, there was a lot of external practice. People would model themselves and do exactly what Katagiri Roshi was doing as much as possible. how he did oryoki, how he did bowing, how he did sitting, how he did everything. And then it's like we were all under some pressure to follow that. There were people who would get upset and would talk to you about not doing things correctly, not doing things externally correctly. So it's like, well, this is interesting, but the external modeling is only going to take you so far. So fortunately, in Buddhism, we talk about internal modeling quite a bit. And then so the idea of how we go about thinking, how we go about feeling, how we go about living is important, and more so in this practice than other religious practices, I think. So the quote that I really wanted to talk about when I started thinking about this is nothing is hidden, which goes along with Katagiri Roshi's thinking on karma, that you carry your karma with you at all times. This is why when people come to the volunteer kitchen, you can tell a lot about these people just immediately, because we carry our karma with us. Nothing is hidden, and nothing is hidden from us. Everything comes up at some point, especially in meditation. Nothing is hidden. Everything comes up at some point. So nothing is hidden. So I went to Google and I typed in nothing is hidden. And what comes up is nothing is hidden from God. Not exactly where I was going from this. Nothing is hidden from God. And also, nothing is hidden from Allah. So it's like, this is interesting. This is, so I'm going to be a little sacrilegious here. And this is real Santa Claus territory. So nothing is hidden from Santa Claus. Around, December, children start to be told, oh, Santa Claus knows if you're good or bad. And so there's this pressure to be good and not mess up your Christmas, right? So Santa Claus, so it's a matter of judgment. It's a matter of judgment. Are you being good? Are you being a good boy or a good girl? Or are you being naughty? So it's like, nothing is hidden from God. It's like, oh, this is a really great way to control people. Nothing is hidden from God. We want you to do these things because these are the good things, and we don't want you to do those bad things. So this is a good method of societal control. But the problem is there's all this judgment going on. So in Buddhism, and we carry these judgments with us from very early age. A lot of the models, a lot of the patterns of behavior we have are based on judgment. And then we're told in Buddhism, this is non-judgment. This is non-binary. This is beyond that. So how do we move from judgment to non-judgment? So this is where I have to rely on Frank Ostaseski. So the chapter I really wanted to bring up was called Bring Your Whole Self to the Experience. This is kind of in keeping with Katagiri Roshi. Bring your whole self to the experience. Bring your whole self, your whole karma, everything to the experience. So here, I'll just start reading. When all of us were children, our parents and grandparents, older siblings, teachers, spiritual advisors, and other responsible adults in our lives did their best to show us right from wrong. By and large, they were well-intentioned. Their goal was to foster our development and protect us from harm. Without a doubt, we needed some guidance, or we wouldn't have made it to adulthood alive and healthy, nor would we have been able to successfully enter into society that relies on certain codes of conduct. And so these grown-ups imbued us with their values and standards. They taught us the basic rules they believed we would need in order to cope in this world. This natural socialization process only becomes problematic when it spills over into a forced attempt to align a child's behavior with the adult's view of life. Most grown-ups are not ogres, yet they inevitably pass along their unconscious assumptions, unskillful strategies, prejudices, and biases from their own unexamined lives. Maybe your parents were embarrassed by your fascination with your sexual impulses, or exhausted by your unstoppable energy. Perhaps your teachers and spiritual leaders used warnings and reprimands to control your behavior, manage your emotions, and keep you from doing things that made them uncomfortable. Or maybe your mother or father wanted to get you to do things that you really didn't want to do, like go to sleep when you weren't tired, dress a certain way, have different friends, or eat what was offered, whether or not it looked and tasted good to you. When we are small, the adults have all the power. We were completely dependent upon them for our budding self-perception, and more importantly, for our survival. To a young child, such approval or disapproval often feels like a matter of life and death. Out of self-preservation, we learn to get and maintain approval and avoid shame and punishment by bending to adult wishes. Along the way, we internalize their voices of authority, adapted to their values, or rebelled against them. This conditioning, the should and should nots, the message of something was wrong with us, form the basis of our inner critics. So I think everyone's pretty familiar with that process. People often imagine that the negative grating voice in their heads is helping them, but it's not. The critic doesn't believe in our basic human goodness. It only believes in rules and moral codes. Psychologically, the critic is the protector of ego. It denies everything else. It doesn't know your soul, which is an interesting thing for a Buddhist teacher to say. It doesn't trust your heart to know how you feel, to be empathetic and compassionate in relationships. It doesn't have faith that your intuitive gut sense can guide you in situations you're encountering for the first time. The inner critic only wants you to heed its advice. But there is an alternative to the critic. It's found in the movement from judgment to discernment. Judgment is the harsh, aggressive habit that shuts down the conversation, binds us to the past and old behaviors, and closes off our access to other capacities. Discernment makes space, helps us to have perspective, and allows more of our humanity to show up. Discernment helps wisdom to emerge and enable us to choose a more beneficial future. Our innate discriminating wisdom is a kind, more objective voice that is available to all of us. It can differentiate, discern, and intelligently guide us forward. So this is where he talks about innate wisdom. Still, how do we get there? Our essential nature has certain attributes that are innate, meaning they already exist within each of us. We all have access to them. One of these innate qualities is wisdom. People don't usually think of wisdom as innate. They believe it is something you must acquire over the course of a lifetime through experience. It's true there's an analytical wisdom that needs to be trained and developed over time. We also have innate wisdom. Buddhism refers to a self-revealing wisdom nature that we can attune to through meditation. As we move through the vicissitudes of daily life, our essential nature passes through cultural, familial, and societal conditioning. These innate qualities bump up against our personalities, our belief systems, and the hindrances of our very human minds. As that contact occurs, the qualities of our essential nature go through a process of constriction. They become twisted. Then instead of being expressed in a free, open, and natural way, the various qualities appear distorted. Strength gets tangled up in desires or expectations and gets expressed as frustration, anger, and destructiveness. Compassion passes through fear and shows up as pity or an obsessive need to fix others. The critic is particularly fond of distorting wisdom. In fact, the critic likes to substitute our own voice for the softer, gentler guide of our inner wise person. The critic says, "Trust me, I know you so well. I've been through this before." Wisdom says, "Relax into your experience. You can trust yourself to know what to do." Instead of telling you what might appear to be true, as the critic does, wisdom teaches us how to discover what is really true. Still, how do we do this? We're told that this wisdom exists. How do we get in touch with it? We're certainly in touch with our critic. We hear our critic all the time. And actually, this is really something to me. It talks about this critic and innate wisdom. I thought of the American Buddhist nun and best-selling author Pema Chodron, who wrote, "The problem is that the desire to change yourself is fundamentally a form of aggression towards yourself." I have to read that again and again and again. The problem is that the desire to change yourself is fundamentally a form of aggression toward yourself. That doesn't mean we ought to condone wrongdoing, abandon plans or goals, or resign ourselves to being stuck in our old stories. It means that we should do our best to hold our imperfections with kindness. We can bring self-acceptance forward, befriend ourselves, and get curious about the twists in our innate qualities rather than trying to beat them into submission. This is the path to bring kindness to our flaws, to everything in us, everything that we have going on, to bring kindness to that. This is how we get in touch with our innate wisdom. And to change yourself, to want to change yourself is fundamentally a form of aggression toward yourself. So the part that I had the most trouble with understanding Katagiri's teachings on karma was that karma is energy. But I think I am beginning to understand now that karma is energy because we see what we want to be, we see who we could be, and we see that we're restricted in some ways by our own patterns and thinking. And because of that conflict, that creates energy for us to move towards who we want to be, who we think we want to be. So lately, I've been dealing with radon in my basement. Apparently, I've been dealing with it for 30 years. Last week, I had a reading of 17. And anything over 4, the EPA suggests a radon mitigation system. So I have a radon mitigation system working. But it's like, basically, why do we build a house? Why do we build a structure? Why do we build? It's for protection. It's for comfort. This is a house. The tighter the house is, the more it captures radon. If you go outside, well, and a radon reading of 4 is equivalent to 8 cigarettes a day if you expose yourself to a radon level of 4 for any length of time. But if you go outside the protection, outside the comfort of the house, the radon levels from outside are like 0.2, 0.4. So this is kind of an elaborate analogy of getting out of your patterns, getting out of your structure, getting out of the things that hold you back. This is more from Frank Ostaseski from the chapter, Welcome Everything, Push Away Nothing. My habitual everyday self is not going to be able to welcome challenging emotional experiences easily. Little old me can make some decisions, like whether I want chocolate or vanilla ice cream, but it wants to push away pain, anger, death, the big ticket items that require a more substantial investment from a larger part of myself. Why? My personality is always going to avoid the tough stuff. The personality is full of knowing and often has habitual interest in sustaining the familiar. We want what is happening to fit into our agenda. And this is really obvious. It's easier to see in other people's views how they modify data to fit their views. It's harder for us to see how we modify data to fit our views. But if we welcome everything, so welcoming everything, push away nothing, is neither a foolish nor idealistic invitation. On the contrary, it is eminently practical. Accepting life as is, there it is again, means that we make peace with things as they are, rather than trying to force them to be the way we want them to be and getting frustrated that we can't. Instead of spinning a story that then we try to live into, we open into a way of things as they are and accept that we are completely human, for better or worse. Especially in Western culture, we are taught that if suffering exists, something is wrong. It is a mistake. When we believe suffering is a mistake, it's no wonder that we do everything in our power to steer clear of it. Our avoidance instinct is also due to the fact that our culture has decided that suffering has no value. Why suffer? We have been trained to say to ourselves, you're better off escaping this pain by any means necessary. As a result, we have become masters of distraction. To a great extent, that is our primary human practice. So, being kind with your suffering. So, somewhere talks about when things come up, it's always been the case of express or repress. So we're told to accept. And somehow we get the message, or at least I've gotten the message, that somehow, if I accept, if I open myself, I accept, this thing that's bothering me will just go away. But that's not the case at all. It comes up again and again. What changes is your relationship to that thing that comes up over and over and over again. If you can meet it with kindness, if you can say, oh, this is familiar. This is a friend. This, because we don't want to change that much, but we can change our relationship. Things aren't going to go away. Things that bother you now are going to bother you forever. I'm sorry to report that. But you can change your relationship to it. You can meet it with kindness. I think this is the subtle message. Things aren't going to change in a big way. Things are going to change in very subtle ways. So when I found nothing is hidden from God, it's like, whoa, if you're just working with that kind of attitude of judgment, is this bad? Is this good? These are big things. But in Buddhism, we care about very small things. We care about how we tie our shoes. We care about how we wash our dishes. We care about things that are very trivial, but in the way that we treat those things, we create a world of love and kindness. We create the world that we live in by how we tie our shoes, how we wash our dishes, how we keep our house clean or not clean, or live with it however it is. So this is the route to finding things as they are. So now I can read this again and it makes more sense. This is our path, the qualities of a bodhisattva that open up this capacity to be with things as they are, and willingness, patience to be with suffering, not as an obstacle, but as a kind of intimacy of life. And last week, Aaron talked about uprightness. This is being upright. This is strength of being upright. Finding our strength to do this is something that requires practice. But fortunately, the things that require practice come up over and over and over again. So we have lots of opportunity to practice. So from the same talk from Sensei Kosan, says the feeling of being upright, aware, without being dragged this way or that, and the power of that feeling. To be with all things that are turning, but not dragged about by them, no longer dizzied by the world. The feeling of being upright. So as life goes on, you'll have opportunities, believe me. So that's my talk.
Thank you, Ryushin. Now we're at the always exciting point where we get to have sharing. And so I'd like you to step forward in your shyness and ask questions or share stories.
So Marilyn and I are down at Hokyoji and doing a little bit of painting, a little bit of work. So on the way down from Minneapolis, we're of course talking in the car. It was about a 3-hour drive, and we're talking about our grandchildren who we have a cabin in Wisconsin, and they were there for the 4th of July weekend, about 4 or 5 days, and they're teenagers basically. One's a little bit younger, and we were totally appalled by their what's the word? Lack of
messiness.
Their messiness. They had towels and beach towels and everything strewn all over the place, and we just like couldn't believe it. We were like totally disgusted, and we had a little bit of a talk towards the end of the weekend because we needed help cleaning things up, and we could not believe their room and where they were staying in the cabin was just a mess. And so we're trying to figure out, oh my God, what do you say? I mean, what do you do to get these young people to realize that they're not living they're living first of all in somebody else's place, namely our place, and have respect for themselves and our place, and so to speak. And that your talk, Ryushin, kind of brought that home. I was telling Marilyn in the car, I listen to public radio a lot, and there was a retired general from the U.S. Army, and he wrote a book about some of his times in the Army, and the title of the book was "Just Make Your Bed," right? And the point being, right, as you were just saying, right, about tying your shoes, about doing this, doing that, just take care of your life. And yeah, his book title was Just Make Your Bed. And of course, I've never been in the army, but what I'm told is that when you're in boot camp, you make your bed and you flip, and the sergeant comes by and flips a quarter on the sheets. And if the quarter doesn't bounce because the sheets aren't tight, then you have to make your bed again. And the idea is the idea of discipline, for your own good and the good of others, the good of the world. So anyway, that's kind of what came up.
So I'm going to jump in here. So thank you, Ryushin, for reminding us that the way we eat our food, the way we tie our shoes, takes us back home to ourselves, to the way we treat ourselves, and the way we can apply the same tenderness to ourselves that we apply to the act of unfolding our mats in oryoki and bowing as we receive the food, because the gift of every day is so precious. And returning to the story that John just told about, particularly the teenage grandchildren, on some level my own son as well, and he's in his 40s. The question was, why does it matter whether or not we hang our towels in the bathroom? Why does it matter? And my answer was the way, really what you said, Ryushin, the way you treat the small things leads home to the larger things. And so with gratitude and abundance, it is our practice to come home to the small things so that we can welcome the bigger things. So thank you for your talk. And I'll let you know next year if the grandkids ever get the message.
I think that's the small things that's how we recognize someone with a spiritual presence versus someone like Jerry Rudquist who's not quite present. It's like they're taking care of things very carefully in a particular way. So, and the just make your bed. I had a friend who was in high school who was a valedictorian and went to the Merchant Marine Academy, and he told me they made their beds once in a particularly very disciplined, very tight way, and then they slept on the floor. So they didn't have to make their bed every day. They would, save 2 or 3 minutes, and then it was worth it to them. That doesn't seem right, does it? It seems cheating, but not cheating. It seems like worse than what they were expecting. But I think it's the small things is the avenue. That's how you get to things as they are, is by seeing the world as it is. You're going to see it in small glimpses, because we are so full of our own karma. Everybody's things as they are very, very different from each other.
Thank you, Ryushin, for your great Dharma talk. So one of the things that I learned when I started to transition into a Buddhist practitioner, what were the 3 jewels: Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And that was really, that was like new to me. kind of blown away by those three things. And one of the, I had to be kind of reminded of the importance, and I mean, I understand it now, but I didn't initially, was the notion of sangha, of community. And I was sort of always stuck with in my previous experience with, another time in my life, with the rules and regulations and the judgment, but I didn't really understand sangha, the community. And so I've had this experience, John and Marilyn, this same experience with others, and I've been in practice with others, but also with kids and guests who kind of just like, okay, are you here alone? And one of the things I say now that really works, and it's actually pretty powerful, is that I say, we're living here in a community. This is a community. And I don't know, it seems to resonate, has resonated. It resonates with me, and it has resonated with others that like in when I've had people here, kids, anyway, the idea of a sangha community, it's really powerful. We live with each other. So anyway, thank you. That's what I thought of with this discussion. So thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Who else wants to share? Go ahead, Aaron.
Thank you, Ryushin. Yeah, I don't know if I'm being a crab or what, but I think about, I guess, this innate wisdom, which I totally get, but I think about it because it sounds like Atman to me, and I'm wondering what, I mean, there are evolutionary advantages to behaving in a certain way, being tidy or learning how to deal with community, for example. And I can see through the millennia that we've existed on the planet that it becomes almost a spiritual practice because it's so connected with life. And I'm just, it's just something I kind of churn over and over again. But I wonder what your thoughts are on the relationship of Atman and innate wisdom and practice and just that stuff.
Could you tell us what Atman is so that we can follow this a little better?
Oh, I have no authority, but just this idea that there's no enduring self. And to me, innate wisdom sounds like this thing that if we could just, find it, it'll lead, yeah.
It'll be perfect, right?
Well,
Yeah, I would be I'm kind of skeptical of even the concept of innate wisdom. I mean, we can fool ourselves so much, and we're very, very good at fooling ourselves. So we may think we're tapping into innate wisdom, and we're not. And somewhere in the Dostoevsky book, he says, don't think about how things, hope and fear, how things are going to turn out this way or that way. Just you take refuge in that things are going to change. things aren't going to be this way. Whether things are the way you hope, turning out the way you hope, they're not going to stay that way. Or things turning out the way you fear, they're not going to stay that way either. So I think you have to continually test this idea, even of innate wisdom, but this practice of kindness towards everything that comes up makes things different. And I've learned a lot by I watch a lot of bike packing videos and sometimes through hikers, and there's a expression of hike your own hike that people who are experienced hikers have learned not to judge themselves by other people, not to judge themselves by their pace or by their mileage or by how they do things, but you have to hike your own hike. I think this is also what the Buddha was talking about at the crossroads villages. You have to figure it out yourself. You have to hike your own hike. And that includes your own innate wisdom. Someone's manifestation of their innate wisdom might be very different from yours. And you may think, well, that's strange, but that actually might be working for them. So I don't know, who can say, but living together in community, there are certain rules that you have to follow, and to live in harmony with each other is when it works, it really works. But there's also, it goes deeper with Sangha. Is like, if you're going to bring everything up, you need people that you can talk to about everything. And if you're like me, can be crabby and snarky and sarcastic, you need somebody you can bring that up to and work through that. You can be kind to your own snarkiness. You can be kind to your own meanness. So Stephen Batchelor has one of his books, I think, After Buddhism. He brings up the fact that the Buddha had this relationship with a local ruler, that they exchanged letters and they exchanged conversations with each other. Even the Buddha had somebody he could talk to and talk to about these things. So I thought that was very revealing, that, and this is brought up with Ananda's, like how important Sangha is, and friendship is the most important thing. So it's important to have this connection between people.
Thank you. Yes.
I'd like to say something.
Okay.
Thank you, Ryushin, for your talk. I appreciated your words. One of the things that I want to respond to is the idea of smell. That the smell in relationship to our karma, and in relationship to community and to the larger world. And one of the things that, for me, that I try to practice to my capacity, I don't always succeed, is to go towards those who may not be in alignment with me or attuned to me. And I just want to share a story of what that would look like, what that looks like for me, is when I was a social worker, I worked with a lot of different people. And I got along with some, and there were some I did not get along with. Not because I'm kind of a snarky person too. I have a lot of fire. So some people kind of turn away from that. And I was in a position where I was a child service worker at one point, and child protection workers were over child service workers. And my supervisor said to me, I want to ask you if I should assign this case to you, because the child protection worker on this case is someone who you and her butt heads. And I said to her, you know what? Assign the case to me. I need to learn to get along and to work with people that I don't necessarily agree with. And she said to me, are you sure you want to do that? I said, well, no, but I need to. So I think that for me, it's important to expand and open my circle of smell to different smells. So I really appreciate you, Ryushin, bringing that reflection forward. Thank you.
Do you want to say anything, Ryushin? We're getting near the close of our time together. Okay. Because it's so apropos, I just want to remind you all that we have family weekend at the end of July. So if you need any practice with either being a child, because we've all been those children, or with receiving that energy and working with that energy, please come and join our family weekend. Thank you so much, Ryushin. Thank you. And thank everybody for coming. Let's see. I need to say, first of all, who's coming up next time. So Tyson Alford, who is a priest at Clouds-in-Water and lives in Wisconsin and has been helping a Katagiri Sangha get through a transition period, is going to be talking to us next Sunday. And I look forward to that. I'm sure he'll offer very interesting insights. And we've got in the chat box a link to our donation spot. We appreciate every single gift, no matter how small and how many those might be. We'd also like you to like us on Facebook and Instagram, and certainly to be aware of introducing people to a Hokyoji or bringing them along with you, even if it's, not a physical visit, but giving them a chance or an invitation to get to know what being here can offer to their life. Is there anything else that I need to say? I don't think so. So let us close with the 4 vows. Those are also in the chat box if you need them. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it. May your week go well. May your day go well. And may we see you
Thank you.
again next week. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.